Hello, everybody. My name is Mpochitapi, and this is TCS Plus, the business technology show which shines a spotlight on the trailblazers shaping the ICT landscape. I'm joined in studio today by Cliff. Cliff, how are you? It's great to have you back.
Good to see you, and thanks for having me again. Really nice to be here.
Wonderful. Do you want to tell us a bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, sure. My name's Cliff de Wit. I'm the MD of ADG. ADG is a consulting technology licensing firm based in South Africa. We basically cover the gambit of understanding mostly these days cloud platforms, data, and of course the buzzword of the day, AI on top of that data platform. So we spend a lot of time working in that area. We have some security solutions, but we really focus on that area. And we work across most of the big vendors, across Microsoft, Google, a little bit of work with Amazon, and helping our customers really translate. I think what's really core to us is sort of the what, like how to take businesses and business requirements and use technology to solve real problems inside businesses. That's really what we do well.
Very exciting work, especially now, which brings me to our topic, of course. We are discussing the agentic shift and why South African workers need to evolve from being and becoming supervisors of digital labor. Yeah. And I really, really love this topic, because I think the last biggest evolution that we've had in the workforce, I think, would date back to the Industrial Revolution. Yeah. And I would say that the changes we're going through now are quite similar to that. Yeah. And with the advent of AI, we've interacted with it very much through a chatbot system where we ask it a question and it gives us a really smart answer. But we are seeing a shift because AI can do more, So we'll be unpacking that agentic shift, where we go from, systems just turning out an answer, but to starting to plan and decide and execute on decisions that humans previously would be doing. And so that is our topic today, and that's what we'll be unpacking.
Really exciting.
And before we get into it, let's start with terminologies for those that might not be too familiar. What is generative AI? Chatbots, prompting agents, and how does that differ from agentic AI?
Right. So maybe the way to think about it is sort of, as with all things, there's an evolution in this space. I think one of the first sort of aha moments it's probably started with machine learning. That's really the basis of this technology that we kind of talking about so glibly today. And it evolved probably into what we think about as artificial intelligence. And I suppose one of the biggest aha moments at least for the general public, was the advent of the chatbot, ChatGPT, Gemini-style interface, where all of a sudden you had a prompt and you could ask it almost anything and it would give you an answer. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's also wrong. People should recognize that. And I guess over the last couple of years, we've watched this evolve into probably better answers. And you kind of said that word just now, better thinking answers. So as the technology evolves, as the frontier labs put more and more research into this, the models have got better at providing more coherent answers, but probably also better, well thought out answers. And a lot of this is just research and development right now. I think one of the biggest next moments was if you spend more time at the computer level reasoning about the answer, you get a better quality answer. And so you'll see if you use any of these models today, you'll have different choices with different cost structures, because the more compute time, the more tokens you spend in the terminology today on the problem, often the better the quality of answer that you get. I think the evolution that then happened was, that was great. I can interact with something, but really the human is receiving the information. Yes. And the human now has to decide what it does with the information. It can answer your question, give you a piece of information, might affect a decision that you make. The natural evolution is sort of where we're moving in today, which we call agentic, is we are now taking the responsibility of making some of those decisions. And the important word here is action. The action that you take, instead of relying solely on humans to take actions, we are letting the machine learning system not only surmise the response or the recommendation, but in some times take the recommendation and action it.
And move forward with it.
Correct. So we are moving from providing information to synthesizing information and taking action based on the information that the model suggests or defines.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And so talk to me a little bit more about an agent and what an agent would do versus, as as you've alluded to, just putting in the information and then taking it and then using it. But where you use an agent, you would sort of allow it to take that action.
Yes. I'll give you a practical example, something we built for a customer. So we built for a banking customer, they have a KYC process, as most of them do. They rely very heavily on people to validate the documents that were supplied, proof of address, etc. We built an agentic system that ingested the documents that were captured, looked at the document, validated that there was an address in the system, and marked the various bits of documentation in the process that were required and validated that they had all the right documents. So typically that would be done by a human being. Very laborious, very boring work, just looking at documents day in and day out and circulating addresses. We've got an agent that basically does part of the KYC process now. And what we now do is we have human beings looking at the exception part and making higher level decisions on risk, for instance, based on the data that the model is now surfacing. Maybe they don't like the area or the address, whatever the case may be. But those people now have higher cognitive function jobs that they're performing, not just looking at documents and capturing addresses. So in this case, the agent is not just being given information. The reason it's an agent is it's able to synthesize that information, complete a step in a process, and move it on to the next step. It's taking an action.
Sure. So cool.
Yeah.
And I guess some of the people who are a little bit more negative about AI, will say it is taking our jobs, and use that as the reason to not to adopt it or take it up in their companies. And how would you say we should rather view this? I mean, it's allowing the way that we work to evolve. As you mentioned, we can, use that cognitive bandwidth to do tasks that actually create more value. Yeah. So what would you say to people who feel threatened by AI being able to take over tasks that they've been doing for the past 10 years?
Yeah, it's a really, really great question. And I guess, again, I like to look back in history. When the vehicle was invented, when Henry Ford invented the first car, there was a massive industry that existed around, they were called farriers, people who built horseshoes. And that industry fundamentally changed. The flexible farriers took their craft that they knew how to do well and started manufacturing metal parts for cars, fixing cars. The people who fixated on only creating horseshoes, well, that industry's demand changed very significantly. The Oslo people who make horseshoes, far fewer than there were before cars were made. I think we're in a similar transformation, right? And I guess my point is that the human skills involved in business are fundamentally changing, but the basics of business still remain. And I think AI is a capability that whether you like it or not, you're going to have to embrace if you want to move forward and work within this new world. The people who are adaptable enough, and we'll talk maybe a little bit about the education system and where this fits in with South Africa in its socioeconomics. But the people who are fortunate to have access, who are capable to get the learning, who are proactive enough to skill themselves, I think have a very bright future in this world. Because to be honest, nobody really, really knows how it's going to affect the world of work. All we do know is it will fundamentally affect the world of work.
Absolutely.
And I guess our point of view on this is that the technology is there. There is great resources. We are very fortunate to have YouTube and a myriad of learning capabilities today. If you embrace that and figure out how you can be more productive in whichever role you are, I think you have a very bright future. If you stick your head in the sand and assume that it's going to have no impact, I think you're going to be very surprised.
Very true. And I love that you've mentioned the South African angle because, we have a unique set of stats around us where we have one of the highest unemployment rates in the world.
Right.
And there's two schools of thoughts. I think there's the school of thoughts that it might take over jobs and compound the issue of unemployment. But there's also another argument that it might make that skills divide even greater and making it harder for, unemployed and unskilled South Africans to enter the market.
Yeah. It's a really good question. And again, I think it's a problem that quite a few organizations and even government is grappling with, right? So I definitely think there are two parts to this discussion. There is certainly a danger that our current education system, and it's not just about education, it's access to digital literacy that Absolutely. I think is key. I mean, it's very encouraging for me to see sort of what organizations like Harambee are doing to work with government. Even personally, when I was at Microsoft in my previous role, we ran several entrepreneurship programs with the Jobs Fund. So I think there's some really, really good work that's being done.
Yeah.
And I would say that we recognize this problem as a country, right? So I'm not sitting here saying, oh, it's doom and gloom, there's despair. But I think certainly we need to all, and honestly, I hate saying them, right? Because it's not a them problem. It's an us problem. We're all citizens of this country. We all want it to succeed.
Yeah.
I think we all need to roll up our sleeves and contribute to helping the youth gain the right experience, have the right access to build the skills to participate meaningfully in this world. I think if we all do that, we all start solving the problem. And, the old adage of everybody contributing small bits eventually makes a big bit is really, really important here. So what I mean by that, I think it's incumbent as an organization, as ADG, we take in quite a few interns. Because we feel that that's our capability and our contribution to taking currently unemployed graduates and giving them workplace experience, exposing them to these technologies so that they have a line on the CV that says they've had an internship and they've worked with these AI technologies, which will help them in their next role. We will employ some of them, but we won't probably employ all of them. But we believe that if every organization in South Africa starts thinking like that, we all start supporting the capability of these unemployed youth to start building experience to participate meaningfully in this world. I think on the flip side, I kind of said it earlier, we also need to make sure that our youth and our students are exposed to this technology, have the desire to learn and have the capability to learn, because I think that's, again, how we start breaking the back of this. So I think the answer sits in the community, all of us contributing to solving this. I think there's a massive opportunity in it for us. Now, the last thing I'll say on this is that I think we must be careful to wash all jobs with the same brush, because as AI creates digital automation, there are many, many jobs that I think are getting left behind that will still have massive value in the value system. Plumbers, builders, artisans, these are all capabilities that it's going to be very hard for AI, at least now, to completely automate or replicate.
Absolutely.
And I think, again, we have an opportunity here to contribute very meaningfully in the workforce with those type of roles. And they could even be augmented with AI learning to make them better at what they do. So I think we talk a lot about the digital world that many of us live in. I think the reality of the economy is much, much bigger than that and much, much deeper than that. And we should look at how AI affects all of those roles as well, which in a production economy, in a growing economy, are essential. And I think they're going to become more and more essential over time.
I love what you've said there about, AI augmenting our current thinking,
right.
Because, even with those traditional jobs which existed, you have access to knowledge to become better 100%. At even mundane things that you might have done. And I always refer to AI as actually being a superpower rather for
100%.
Humans, rather than something that's really looking to replace them.
Yeah. And it's such a good point you make, because I think if lots of people frame their thinking like that, it becomes a little bit less scary.
Absolutely.
It becomes a little bit less like, oh, it's going to replace my job. It's going to make me better at my job.
Yes.
I saw a great statement the other day speaking to one of our customers, and they said they were driving a change process inside the organization to try and get the employees to adopt AI. And they basically had this line that said, AI is not going to replace your job. A person who uses AI is going to replace your job.
100%. And it brings me back to the concept of humans as orchestrators, right? And do you foresee a world in which instead of managing a team of people, you're managing sort of digital labor?
Yes.
What does that world look like? It seems very far away from us, but I don't think we're quite far at all.
No, I think we're actually very close to that. I mean, many big global organizations are starting to add agents as employees in their HR records.
Oh, really?
This is an interesting trend that's starting to happen. So they're starting to think about capable agents as employees.
And they don't take sick leave.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think the concept of managing your AI employees is very current. In one way, it's probably already happening, right? Because certainly as we start building out these agentic interfaces, and I suppose this is where this conversation goes. What is the role of the human in this loop now, right? Is how do we start thinking about oversight of these AI processes?
Nobody's trained us how to oversee agents.
Well, you say that, right? And it's interesting because we have this conversation sometimes with our customers, especially when it very quickly leads into policy and governance. And I guess one of the arguments that we make is that actually organizations are quite well tooled through structures of delegation of authority, of levels, to abstract work and responsibility to different levels of employees. I mean, many businesses, almost all businesses, have that concept, right? It's like the MD kind of has the big structural decisions. You kind of have directors who are responsible for certain things. You have divisions. It goes down. Even when you get to a call center operator, right? Like they're empowered to make certain decisions they have to rely on a manager for delegation of authority. I think in this AI world, you could use that exact same framework and put boundaries in place to have delegation of authority for whichever AI capability you have. And you put the right security context, the right governance context, the right responsibility context around the AI employee. You still have a manager, you know, and in a banking environment, if somebody calls into a call center and wants to transfer 10 million rand, you're just not going to let the agent do that, right? That probably needs human oversight. If somebody calls in and they've passed the right security checks and they want a copy of their statement, maybe that is a capability you allow the AI to delegate to, right? As I said, like it seems scary because it's a machine doing it. I think in many cases we have the right structural framework. We just need to adapt it to this world.
To just adjust a little bit of how we've thought about things.
Exactly.
Okay. And so which skills would you then say are uniquely human in this process and as we're sort of separating those responsibilities?
Yeah, I think, again, this landscape is changing quite quickly. I mean, I remember sort of probably 10 years ago when machine learning, when this capability first started, one of the big interesting statements was AI would never be able to do art or create music because it was uniquely human in creation. And look where we find ourselves today, right?
Absolutely.
So I think the playing field is changing. However, I do think today we still find humans very good at reasoning over, let's call it more complex problems and understanding a network or a framework within. So we talked a little bit about bank transfers, right? Humans, you could have a set of rules that define it and an AI could execute over those rules. But I think over certain threshold limits, you still want humans who have the capability or the experience. This is a massive one. It's very hard to bottle experience in an AI model, right? To know, sometimes we call it gut, right?
Yes. Intuition.
Exactly. That's the great word. I think that intuition is a uniquely human capability still today and should be applied at the right risk levels across processes. I think the other one is empathy, right?
Yeah.
We're naturally, humans are good at talking to each other. It's the way we're
supposed to be.
Sometimes we're ugly to each other. But I think there's a bunch of, and I think that capability, those kind of capabilities are going to be super important going forward. And then I think we call it systems thinking is probably the right word. Is kind of alluded to it in the previous answer, but today AI is really good at solving problems when you define them well. When you just kind of when you want to define your North Star, your strategy of your organization, where you're going, the big decisions that take you along that way, it's still very hard for AI. You can't go into the prompt and say, build me the next 200 million rand company in the financial services industry. What should I do? Right? Like it might give you an answer. It's not going to be the right answer. And it can't build you a strategy to get to that point. So I think those are the kind of, so I would say systems thinking, empathy, and sort of, let's call it large picture thinking prevailing over organizations are very unique human things that are still going to be required going forward.
Okay. And so if you were speaking to a sort of a 21-year-old now that, was planning for the next decade in the agentic area, so you've spoken about, I don't like to call them soft skills because I think they're actually very important skills for the era we're entering into. But what are some of the hardest skills that you would recommend they look into? And I love that there's information everywhere now. In fact, it's become too much of a problem because you need to be, discerning in what you take in.
Yes. It's a great question. It's a very personal question because I have one of those. I have a 20-year-old okay. and we have this debate. Mm-hmm. So I guess my advice is, I think you still, first of all, if you have the luxury to do it, should still figure out what you like to do with your life, right? I think you must be very careful in this age of AI to just go and chase something because you think that job won't exist in the future or you think that it's going to fundamentally change. I'm not saying you need to be naive, but I think if you have a passion for nursing or a passion for engineering or a passion for finance or a passion for law, that's still an important human trait when you're 21 to first try and figure out, and you should put some effort into doing that. I think to come to probably the essence of the question is, the next important part is to say, again, without being ignorant, is almost any role that we talk about, and we've talked about some exceptions, but even those will have augmentation.
Yes.
How does this technology fundamentally change the role that I'm passionate about? So if I'm really passionate about becoming a lawyer, you're remiss not to think that AI is going to change the way law is certainly purveyed on. Yeah. Maybe not the arguments in court, maybe not the thinking about how to draft contracts, but certainly some of the grunge work around exposure and 100-page contracts and querying where certain paragraphs are can be done much simpler using AI, right? So I think it's incumbent on a 21-year-old to think about how this tech will affect my role and start investing in yourself to learn that. Because one of the dangers I see is that, and I think maybe we're fortunate in some ways where we are in our careers that we didn't have to deal with this problem in our youth. But I see some, in almost some resentment of AI in the youth right now, in that it's unfair, right? And they see it as something that they're having to deal with because of our creation, this generation's creation, that is going to cause mass unemployment and going to change their world. And so there's almost a rejection of it, right? You kind of see this rejection movement starting. And I understand it, but I think tides have an interesting way of floating up. Doesn't matter how much you stop them. So I think if you want to embrace this and understand what it's going to do to make your world better, understand what the capabilities are, I think you skill yourself the best way you can for the change that's coming.
That is coming.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the issue of having a human in the loop.
Yes.
And, knowing when to decide to have a decision be made by a human or whether it's sufficient that a machine makes the final call on that. I think when we're sitting and sort of at a high level, it's easy to try and determine. But I think when you get into it, it can be a little bit gray as to where should we actually have a human in the loop. Is there a way to define that, to say which decisions do we believe can be made by machines or agents, and which decisions are absolutely a no-go? So how do we actually determine where we need a human in the loop and not an idiot in the loop, as I like to joke?
You're right. It's a very hard problem to define kind of scientifically, right? And I think each organization has their boundaries. Whether they know it today or not, but they should essentially define them, right? And I come back to the sort of delegation of authority that most organizations probably have in place, right? So I'm sure most organizations that use the call center have different delegations for what a call center agent can do, can approve, or can't approve, when they need management to make a certain decision. That exists because somebody's gone to think about it. They've tested it. They understood the risk.
Yes.
Because let's be honest, humans don't get it right all the time either. Sometimes they make the wrong call. So to me, it actually comes down to a couple of fundamentals. What is the risk you're prepared to take in having the machine make the decision without the human? When is that risk unbearable and you need a human to oversee the decision that the machine is suggesting? And the third bucket for me is, when will the machine never even make the decision? This is always a human decision. Those are kind of the three buckets I see. What you're prepared to delegate, what you need human oversight on, and what you'll never delegate. And I think when you start breaking your business down into those three areas, you start defining those boundaries. The second experience for me, the lived experience, is that it's moving.
Yes.
So I think my advice here is start with something. Be more risk conscious at the beginning. And as your systems, as your capabilities, as your AI gets more capable, you'll probably trust it more. We take the same approach with our human workers. Once our call center operators demonstrate that they understand, once our advisors understand that, we increase people's responsibility as they prove to us that they are more capable. I see the same trajectory, right? The last thing, and maybe we can discuss this a little bit, very interesting. I've spent a bit of time in the advisory space. I spent some time with some really top legal guys over the last little while. Personally, I sit on one or two boards, so it's kind of a little bit personal for me as well. Right now, as we find ourselves, probably in most countries, but certainly in South Africa, if you look at what King is saying, there is no delegation of responsibility from the board or the executive into an AI system that doesn't carry human responsibility.
Okay.
So there's no defense in governance that says, oh, an AI made the decision, not my problem. And I think organizations need to think about that when delegating decisions into AI systems. Ultimately, the governance of the company still carries the responsibility, even if an AI system made the wrong decision. And people should think about that when they are delegating risk, because ultimately they carry the responsibility. Whether it's an AI or a human making the decision, the responsibility still sits on the executive and its board for those decisions. And that might reframe the way you think about how much risk you're prepared to take in that delegation of authority to an AI system.
Sure. That is quite something to think about, because as you mentioned, you build the relationship, you can trust the AI, but God forbid, something goes wrong.
Right.
And accountability. I foresee an instance where, the executive points to the vendor who owns the AI, and the vendor who owns the AI points to the person who was supposed to be the human in the loop.
Right.
And we go around in circles that way, and that person points to the risk committee.
Right.
But who does the buck ultimately stop with on AI decisions? Because if we're saying that, let's say the decision is made at a strategic level by the board, the executives sort of operationalize how governance works, and then the technical people deploy it. Who does the buck stop with for mistakes that AI makes? Yeah,
it's a very good decision. And I think, honestly, some of this is going to have to be tested to actually figure this out. And there's been a couple of test cases, but I always come, like you can kind of see my mode of thinking, I always come back to the same sort of responsibility matrix that we apply in the human level, right? I think the same way we delegate responsibility to humans, and a human can make a mistake in a loop.
Absolutely.
The same responsibility matrix comes up when you have an AI system. I think most of the big international vendors will say we are not responsibility, and they always put this on the tin when you buy it, because often the models are trained by you and your data, so they rightfully say that. But again, it speaks to me about why the narrative really has shifted over the last little while. If you kind of look at what the big AI companies have been saying for the last little years, it's very interesting to see how the narrative has changed. 5 years ago, they said all of these jobs are going to be made redundant by AI. We don't need humans. kind of fast forward to today, many of the big guys, the Sam Altmans of the world, are going, "Oh, we definitely still need humans in the loop."
Absolutely.
Because we need that oversight. And I think that's the reality of this sort of fiduciary responsibility for the governance models to start kicking in and people to understand. To answer your question, I think at the end of the day, the responsibility sits with the organization. Mm-hmm. Yes, of course, in the world, IT is responsible, the business leader is responsible, and the board holds accountability. I don't think the rules change.
Yes.
I think the rules remain the same as they are today. Mm-hmm. Technology maybe changes. We might move decisions from humans to computers in some instances. I think the responsibility matrix stays exactly the same as it is today. And I think that's what King is kind of saying today. You don't get to blame somebody else now.
Absolutely.
That's the reality.
And so where would you put South African businesses' readiness for agentic AI specifically? Do you think they have the measures in place to be able to make those calls and understand sort of the impact of their decisions and delegations of authority?
It's a great question. And I think South African businesses actually are quite progressive, and they always have been, right? I think our private sector has always been quite adopting of new technology. However, it's in pockets, right? I do think because of, and I'm just kind of giving you this point of view with the customers that we see across the country. Mm-hmm. We definitely see organizations that are probably more rooted in fear right now. Mm-hmm. However, I would say maybe 2026, I'm seeing a very big thrust in terms of organizations recognizing that AI is not this fake thing and that it's something that really does have impact. I think there's enough proof now, certainly in the more mature markets, that organizations who have embraced it have got value, have got benefits out of it. And so I think where South Africa finds itself right now is I'm finding, certainly with our customers, is there's a desire to find real use cases within the organization, real examples of how to solve real business problems using this technology. Mm-hmm. I contrast it a little bit to where we came from, where it was almost like, oh, yeah, this AI thing's coming. Let's hire some smart people, put them in a room and hope they come out with something. Yeah. It's kind of moved to, okay, that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. Let's actually look at our business, figure out where our pain points are inside our business. And through those pain points, let's see if this technology can solve some of those pain points. Mm-hmm. It's something that we as an organization do a lot of. We kind of help organizations identify their business problems and figure out the what before the how. I think there's a lot of organizations that are there to just sell technology for technology's sake. That's not what deals with. Mm-hmm. So again, sorry, to come back to your question, I find South Africa quite progressive in its approach right now to wanting to use AI to solve real business problems. I think there's a couple of, as there always are, really futuristic companies that are doing it. But I see the large sort of demand for it kind of building now. And I think we're in that sort of growth phase of solving real business problems with AI right now, if I were to categorize it.
Exciting times. And do you think there's any specific sectors that might take to it more naturally and some sectors that might struggle?
You know, it's such a great question, that because I would always say, like whenever there's new tech, it always seems to land in financial services, insurance, banking, those type of sectors first, right?
Especially in Africa, that really takes off here.
It does. But I've been quite pleasantly surprised, right? Because we've got some customers are sort of in mining and manufacturing. We've got some customers. In fact, I just had a session this morning with an organization that is in dairy farming, so in agriculture. And it's interesting to see how diverse sort of demand side is right now. So I think it still is strong in sort of telco and financial services. That's certainly where we're doing a lot of work at the moment. But if I look at the demand side, I see it kind of starting to represent itself across many industry sectors. And I think it's because, again, it can solve very real problems in those sectors, especially where there's data visualization or prediction involved, which has its roots in many, many parts of the organization. So I think organizations like agriculture can really gain big efficiencies from using AI to understand to become better at farming or milk producing or understand demand side or understand supply side. And so that's certainly one of the trends I'm seeing, is that the two big guys, the telcos and the financial services, are great, but I definitely see the demand side growing, which is really, really exciting.
It's very exciting. Yeah. I think, with all in agriculture specifically and, food security being a looming problem, exactly. I really think, AI can help us close that gap.
Exactly.
Okay. We're going to do a quick lightning round. Oh. Silly answers are permitted.
Okay. Thank you.
You don't have to think too hard. Okay. So the first one.
Yeah.
One job that will look completely different in 5 years.
An accountant.
One skill every executive should develop immediately.
AI prompt literacy.
Most overhyped AI claim you've heard recently.
AI will replace all our jobs.
Of course. Biggest mistake businesses are making with AI today.
Not understanding the problem they want to solve.
Good one. One thing South Africans should be optimistic about.
We have a young economy. We have a hungry economy in terms of our population. If we direct it correctly, we have huge opportunities.
And the youth are our future.
100%.
Love that. And can you take us through a case study, Cliff, of, where the agentic shift is really making a great impact?
Yeah, that's a nice question. Maybe a pertinent example, we built a solution for a customer the other day, looking at their legal team. So I know that's close to home. They had many, so it was a specific part of the legal team, contracting and procurement. And their problem was they have quite a tight regulatory environment, which moves underneath them every now and again. What they wanted to know is, in the hundreds of contracts they have, how does a change in regulatory environment affect the actual contracts that they have, and how would they go about amending those contracts if any piece of regulatory framework changed? Now, traditionally, that would have meant that a bunch of lawyers, every time there was a regulatory change, would have to trawl through 800, odd contracts. Each of them were quite uniquely drafted. So there's no standard paragraph for that bit, and go and find any exposure that they have to the regulatory change. What we built for them was we built an agent that pervaded their contract base. And they could then prompt into the agent that says, this is the change in the regulatory environment. Please tell me in all my contracts where I have exposure to this regulatory change. And it would surface up all the contracts, show them in which paragraphs they have exposure, and we give it to the human. We don't change the contracts. It had one specific purpose, was to give you visibility of the exposure. I thought it was a really nice example, because now the lawyers in that organization are not spending their time being catalogs, right, which is probably the worst job you can have. Now they're getting given the right part in the contract. They can look at it again with that human oversight that we talk about, with that human empathy, with that human systems thinking, and understand what this meant for this client in this, understand if actually maybe it's still okay, maybe it's not okay anymore. And if need be, amend the contract, redraft it, have the discussion with the other party, revise the contract. That was a really nice example for me of where an agent adds real value to the actual lives of the lawyers in that organization.
Sure. It's a great example. And I want to put you on the spot a little bit with this one. So the nice thing about, I think, a lawyer in that instance, right, is that if it was a normal human, we'll say 3 or 4 of them, at 5 o'clock, they'd down tools, go home to their family, make dinner,
right,
come back the next day, keep reviewing all the hundreds of contracts. But I feel that the dilemma that having agents now brings is that they work so efficiently, and just as you've pushed the envelope, the work comes back. And as you've pushed the envelope, the work comes back. And so what actually happens is that humans have a greater cognitive load because they have this data coming back to them. And I think That's maybe something else that we ought to anticipate in this super efficient, super productive agent workforce that we have. And what are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. I mean, I guess my analogy is that, and maybe this is also an evolution of us in the workforce, right? Because this is not a unique problem. As soon as we all had mobile phones and laptops, I mean, I look at my parents' generation, right? You probably, certainly when they started working, they only had a phone at the office.
Yeah.
All the work stuff happened at the office. When you left to go home at 5 o'clock, you literally were uncontactable.
Yes, until the next day.
Exactly. Our generation was all about take your laptop home. You can have your email wherever you want. You've got WhatsApp following you wherever. So the transition between work and home started blurring very quickly. And I think COVID added another whole dimension to that where our work became our home and our home became our work. And so we started blurring our work world and our home world, right? We could argue whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And I think my answer to that is people need to understand how to set their own boundaries in this world. I think you make a fantastic point in that if you're going to now make a human in this new world a super productive human, partner it with an agent that never sleeps, never eats, it's almost like the expectation on the human is going up to the next level to be the partner of this agent. And I think for your own mental health being, the reality is we are still human.
Absolutely.
We still need to sleep. We still need downtime. We still need to decompress. And I think I always come back to how do I manage my own work-life balance is you need to set your own boundaries and your organization needs to respect those boundaries or help you define those boundaries. I think this problem you raise again, super point, is going to become amplified in this world. Again, I think we have tools to deal with it, but we should recognize that it exists. Because let's be real, burnout is real, right? Like
Absolutely.
We see it around us. We see it certainly in colleagues that we have. And so I think recognizing it and having a framework to deal with it is really, really important. It's a super point.
Sure, you've given us a lot to think about. I think I certainly like the idea of humans as orchestrators.
Yeah.
And, exercising oversight over digital labor. And I think we all, for ourselves, as you've mentioned, with the 21-year-old, for ourselves, we need to figure out how we fit into this new era where we have this super productive, agent, which is our superpower, if I may.
Spot on.
But I think it's been a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for your insights and let's evolve.
I love it.
Evolve, adapt or die, they say.
Exactly. Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much, Cliff.
Okay. Thank you. Nice to see you again.